Paul, welcome to the very first Unbound members podcast. There was only one member that we could start with, and it was a member of the OOG crew, mate. So, welcome. Good to have you on.
Yeah, cheers, lads.
You want to get kicked
Wicked.
off with a little bit of a background in terms of, and we'll tell this is the first one as we go through it with a lack of preparation, but who cares, eh? But should we get kick started in terms of your story a little bit like pre you starting this business, Paul? Because I think that's important for people to know and certainly important in terms of why you started the business in the first place as well.
Yeah, so I kind of like started off my career as an engineer, as an apprentice engineer. So I had kind of no idea what I wanted to do when I left school.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to do like something around art, go and do art at university or something like that. But ended up Rolls-Royce came into my school and did a presentation about apprenticeships, and I just thought, do you know what? Actually, I'm not really fussed about going back into like academia and going doing further study. This means I can get paid. It looks like you get training. I didn't really think too much of it. I just thought, I'll do that. So I finished up just going down that road of becoming an apprentice and then working as an engineer. And that was really interesting because there were elements of that job I loved. So I loved being on a shop floor. I was 15 actually, because I was the youngest in my year. So I was 15 when I started that job. Uh, Being a 15-year-old in a shop floor full of working class men, some of them, naughty men as well, in terms of what were going on that shop floor. I loved it, absolutely buzzed off it. I weren't too keen on the job, actually being an engineer. I just loved, so I was like the butty boy and things like that. So Friday mornings I'd take everyone's butties, I'd put like 10, 20p on top of everyone's butty to like be able to get a free one and stuff like that. So yeah, I love that. You could get all that dodgy CDs and all that kind of stuff and knocked off DVDs. So I love that people, being entertained and, football hooligans there and all that kind of stuff. It was great. But when I actually finished that apprenticeship, then I panicked because then I was like an engineer. I wasn't the apprentice anymore. I was an engineer on that shop floor, and I was expected to fall in line with what everyone else was doing. And then I had a moment of real panic that I don't want to do this. I don't want to work on a shop floor on machines. No way, that's not me. And at that time, my then girlfriend, now wife, had gone to university in Manchester. And I remember going over one Thursday night. I had work the next day. I went over one Thursday night when she first started. And we had a night out in Manchester. And I just thought, this is what I want. I want this. I want to live in a city and be partying and stuff like that. So I decided to go to university. And oh, sorry, just kill that. Yeah, decided to go to university. And yeah, and then kind of like I had 4 years there, so that was how I started it all. And then I'd had my life in Manchester, then finished that and became a design engineer. Um, did that for 10 years. That was a good job and it paid well. But again, it didn't really satisfy me in terms of my needs, which was very mundane and very similar, a bit Groundhog Day-ish. So then ended up 10 years later looking for something new and went into a role in education as a lecturer. And that was a whole different journey, and I could talk all day about that. But that was a nice career switch and enabled me to do something which was passing on my skills and experience to other people, which I, really love doing.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get onto that a little bit more because it's relevant in regards to the business, isn't it? In terms of that career switch that you did as well. So um, let's fast forward a little bit more, Paul, as well, if that's okay. So I don't know when this moment is for you, but the moment that you were employed and you started thinking, "Fuck this, I want to do something for myself." Like, talk to me about that. Like, when did it happen? Was it like a quick realization? Is it something you always wanted to do? Like, yeah, I'd love to know a little bit more about
Yeah, so this actually came from a real like dark moment of my life. So I I kind of was working in education, working in a job that I felt that I wasn't happy doing this job. It wasn't giving me what I needed. And as well with the whole COVID thing, lockdown, all the things that happened at this time, my wife My wife's a GP. What we went through in COVID was probably different to what other people went through in COVID. So all these things kind of seemed to, and then it all culminated with me working in this job I was unhappy with. And other things happened. Mother and father-in-law got dementia. Well, like nightmare. Everything like all happened at once, and I finished up having a bit of a mental health thing where I couldn't do that job. I couldn't go into work and do that job, and I had to actually ring up work and say I can't come in. I'm not well. Never happened to me before in my life. I didn't want to, ever play the mental health card and say like, because I didn't understand it myself. But so I had kind of 5 months off work, something that I would never, ever have thought would ever happen to me. I am not that person, I'm Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. So this was a period of real kind of like rock bottom. Couldn't look after my kids, wasn't leaving the house, was sleeping. I had to go to bed in the afternoons, just like really, it was really bad. So then it was thinking, right, how do I get better and what do I do? And going back to work for me wasn't an option. Not long term anyway, it wasn't going to be sustainable in terms of me getting better and me being happy. So it's like, well, what do I do? What's my options? So you start looking at your options and exploring what they are. One of them was, well, what if I set up a business? Now, that, I always think with business, now getting to the point where I am now, when you look back, it's like, there's so many barriers. It's almost like the most ultimate thing that there's everything's a barrier. When you talk to people, like they always say, "Oh, I'd love to do that, but I can't really afford to take the risk." And it's like, well, no, neither could I, neither can I. But that was the point, I think, where it was, what do I do now to get myself out of this, and what could that be? So allowing myself to have that thought and allowing myself to pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I think that's an interesting journey, isn't it, in terms of like, I think maybe we'll fast forward even more here, because I think it's relevant, rather than thinking, right, we just need to piece this journey together bit by bit. Because I get it, like in employment, I wasn't a happy boy. But in employment, like I wasn't happy. And I don't know whether that's for what was going on at the time, or just the way that maybe entrepreneurs are wired. Like there must be something more. There must be something more to life. There must be something more than sitting in this job and being so confined to like my role and my tasks and all the rest of it. So I think we'll rewind back again, mate, if that's all right. But first and foremost, I want to kind of ask a little bit more on that, in terms of like, how are you feeling now? You're in the depths of running a business with staff and clients and responsibilities and all the rest of it. Because I think it'd be easy for people to look at that story and go, oh, well, you didn't want to go to work because maybe suffering mentally, or wasn't up for going to work. Like, how the fuck can then you go and expect to run a business? But I think people who don't run a business sometimes don't understand that it's the shackles of the work that sometimes cause that problem as well. But what's your perspective on that, mate? And how are you feeling now that those shackles are gone as well?
Oh, yeah. So when I look back and I think in terms of how I ever operated, I don't think I ever gave, apart from when I was in education initially, when I first went to education, that was very, very fast paced and I was running at 100 mile an hour. But usually we're probably never getting out of like first to second gear ever in work. In terms of, I always knew I was capable of more. And when you have this, working in a full-time job where you've got a thing that you do, and I struggled with that. And it's not until now, looking back on it, I'd have periods where I'd maybe work intensely for like 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and then I'd just be staring at the screen until like home time. And that was my life. That's what happened. And I just felt a bit numb, really. Whereas then you start running a business, and it was almost then, actually, I felt like something had been turned on, and I didn't know how to manage that. Because, and Rich, how many phone calls did we have? I remember one phone call on a Saturday morning, I almost felt like having a panic attack, because I was running so fast and my brain was so active, and my thoughts, and I was creative, all these things were happening, and I almost couldn't control it. It was like a car that was going downhill and the brakes had been cut and I couldn't stop it. So yeah, it wasn't the answer to all my problems. Like starting a business, in some ways, it created more problems, but that's a journey that you go on to understand more about yourself and who you are and how to manage that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting though. 'Cause, obviously, you and I know each other really well, Paul. So it's easy to, I suppose, freestyle on some of this stuff. It's like, and we've had a lot of these conversations as well. And it's like, okay, so you can go from like being uninspired in a job with the shackles on, which then causes loads of other problems, and then you go to running businesses, and it's like, then it's causing other problems. But these problems have got fucking purpose, and I love them. Like, you can get stuck into them. But then the way our brains are wired, it's like, then you've got another problem. It's like, how do I cope with this? And how do I manage this? Because it ultimately could also drive you to burnout quite quickly and probably drive you quite insane if you just hit it at the speed that like you tend to go anyway, Paul, knowing you. Like, I think that was one of the first things, and I've said it to a few people and yourself. Like, we had that chat in the early days when you were in the early phases of your business, and then you reached out to me, and we were working out maybe how I could potentially help and all the rest of it. Like, I knew straight away, mate, like, you're fucking made for this. Like, wasn't quite sure in terms of like where the business would go and all that type of stuff. But in terms of like you as a person, I was just like, yeah, Paul's absolutely made for this. And I think that's maybe easy to spot, like knowing business and being around business a little bit more. So I think that's really interesting, mate. Let's talk a little bit about you, like outside of work as well, before we get to the business stuff. And we could we maybe could go on over to a few points here. But some of the things I didn't find out till later on. I knew there was something with you that, yeah, you've got that spark, you've got that fire. I knew that you just wouldn't fucking give up when it came to business, which is why I was like, yeah, I'm all in with Paul, let's do this. But then I found out later on stuff like black belts, ultra marathons, and it all started making sense a little bit more. So what's driven you in those areas in the past then, in terms of those personal pursuits, on top of having fucking 4 kids, mate?
Yeah, I think I've always needed to have things going on and things that I can commit to. And for me, it's the challenge of it. It's like, so I'd never run a marathon, and I signed up for an ultra marathon, an ultra fell marathon as well, not even a road one, on the hills, 38 mile. That was my first marathon. And it's like, well, why did I do that? Why didn't I just do a normal road marathon? It's like, well, because anyone can do a road marathon. But how many people do you know that's run a 38-mile fell marathon? Not many. And then that becomes, it's a goal, it's something to work at, it's hard, it's something you've got to dedicate yourself towards. But the problem I have is when I finish those things, so it's like karate. I want to become a black belt. I don't want to go and do karate and see how I get on. I want to become a black belt, and I'm going to become a black belt. And I became a black belt. But when I became a black belt, I lost interest. When I crossed the line of the 38-mile ultramarathon, I lost interest. I actually didn't run for about 12 months after I crossed that line, because it's like, well, now what? Now what do I do? I don't want to go and run another one because I've done that now. So there's elements of that which make my life complicated and hard because I'm always searching for the next thing to do. It's like with kids, we always said we're gonna have 4 kids. 4 kids is bloody hard, but I love it. It's a challenge. It's like, recently giving up alcohol. So I've decided to give up alcohol because it's a challenge. Can I do it? Well, yeah, I can do, and actually it's had massive benefits. So there's all things like that, and then like the business side now is like the ultimate challenge, and that's a challenge you can't, there is no end game in that. And that's what I think for me really draws me to it and attracts me to it, is that it's like, well, I don't just want a business where I'm sat in my office at Endert Garden and it's just me making a bit of money. I want an empire. That's my goal now and that can be done. That is achievable, and I know it is. So I don't set myself goals which are unachievable or unrealistic. For me, it's about knowing what you are capable of and how you will do that, and then just dedicate yourself until you've done it.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, we often talk about businesses been infinite games where there's never an end to it. You mentioned before about feeling like you're unshackled now, but in those like very, very early days, you didn't have any. It felt like a car without brakes, which that can be a challenge that a lot of people often don't talk about running a business where you've got this infinite game that never ends, which can be, the positive side of that can be it can be very exciting and inspiring. But how have you started to incorporate things that have allowed you to like find a bit more of a balance where you're not pushing yourself too hard and, reaching that point of burnout?
Yeah, I mean that's an ongoing battle, I would say. And what's been good about, engaging with you guys with the Unbound stuff is like being made aware of how you can do other things. So I'm working very, very hard on myself to keep myself. I remember saying to Rich, like I never realised, running a business is like being an elite sports person. It's like the way that you've got to dedicate yourself to it. So I'm a very impulsive, kind of addictive personality type of person. I was a party person, as Rich was back in the day, as you were, Tristan. That's something that has always been in my life, and not that on the head, because I had to in order to make this work. So for me to operate at my best level, I can't have these. I can't have booze. I can't have all the other stuff in my life. Then there's the exercise. I need to be out exercising, cold water therapy, diet. So I've stopped eating meat, and that's working well for me. Journaling, all these things that I'm quite a complex character. I'm always laughing with my wife Jill about it, saying like, God, I am. My mum always used to say I'm high maintenance, and now we're like, I'm not high maintenance, I'm medium maintenance, and now I'm like, I am full on high maintenance, and I understand that. So yeah, managing myself, that's almost a full-time job as well. But I've got to put a lot of those things in place, and I think it's important to do those as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So it's always a journey with these things, isn't it? Of like finding like what works for you, and where where that balance of where those lines are.
Like starting Enter Engineering then, Paul. So talk to us about why you started the business in the first place. Like you've gone in a certain direction. Why is it in that direction?
Yeah. Well, I think my first idea for a business was linked to. It was based on my job. So I was working at a college where I was like head of sales and recruitment for apprenticeships. So helping support businesses to take on employee apprentices, and that's something we offered at the college. Now, that when I used to look at that process, that for me didn't work very well in terms of the recruitment side. So when you're looking at I'm going to say young people, it's not always young people, but when you're looking at onboarding apprentices, it's very messy. It's not a slick process. It takes ages, and a lot of the schools aren't very good at pushing apprentices and supporting their students to do this, because the careers leads are always overburdened. Anyway, so I thought that could work in terms of being able to support employers. Now, I ended up seeking some free job support, some free like business support online. Engaged with a really good guy. He put me in touch with another guy who was local, who was trying to do something similar, and we kind of got together, and then we decided, look, let's kind of combine what we're doing and have a go at this. Now, he had already got his own business. Now, in hindsight, it was just never ever going to work. He was busy doing what he was doing. I was, off work, looking to get something up to speed and commit to that. So that failed, really. We kind of created it. It did a lot for me to be able to understand the process of how do you set up a business. But yeah, that definitely didn't work, is what I would say. In a good way, though, when you talk about failure and lessons you've got to learn, that was lesson number one.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I think I engaged with you, Rich, about what it could look like going forward.
Yeah. Fine. So you've looked at the apprenticeship route. What's the drive behind you to make that change? Because I know there's a different division to your business as well. Well, different divisions already to your business. Um, obviously the first one is helping emerging talent come through the ranks in engineering or get into engineering. But then we've got a new division that is actually on the flip side in terms of helping the training providers as well and helping the education of these junior engineers as well, where you're actually playing a role in, yeah, making sure that the people are there to support these guys and grow them in the first place, essentially. So helping the colleges find engineers that potentially are going to help these guys out as well. So there's there's an obvious drive behind that education piece, whether it's the early stage or people supporting that early stage as well. Like, where does that come from? Like, what's the fucking problem?
Yeah, I think that, working in education was something that I had no idea that I could do. So when I think about my own journey into education, it was after a chance conversation with somebody
Yeah,
one evening at a family do. And she worked it was my cousin she was assistant principal at a local college, and I'd been working as a design engineer for 10 years at the same company. I was kind of a bit bored. I was looking for something new. She told me about this opportunity. She said, have you ever thought about being a lecturer? And I'd never, ever, ever considered that. I didn't know I could do it. But then I ended up getting a job working in education. Now, that's the issue, is that a lot of the people we need to work in these jobs with this industry, up-to-date industry experience, are really unaware that these careers are for them. So it get me thinking then, when we launched Enter Engineering as an engineering recruitment company, looking at offering advanced support and guidance to engineers that are looking to progress their career or start their career. The plan was always, once we get this off the ground and we're chatting to these engineers, let's see if we can find any kind of lecturers or trainers or assessors within that pool. And I always knew that could work, because that's a different approach. That's something that isn't currently happening. No one's creating new talent to consider roles within education. So ran a pilot with a local training provider, and that worked. And then that really gave me the confidence to kind of go all in with it this year, which we've done, and is working very, very well.
yeah. So it's obviously been a graft, mate. Because I've been on this journey alongside you as well, and obviously we've talked about it a lot. So it's interesting doing a podcast when you know kind of the story behind it as well. But I'm trying to make sure we're getting asking the right questions in terms of, so obviously if anyone's listening, they can kind of understand your journey, and hopefully there's some inspiration for them as well, mate. Because it is fucking inspiring. Like, what you've done is incredible in such a short space of time as well. So it's not been easy. It's been a graft, obviously, like any new businesses, and there's no hiding away from that. But I mean, the success that you've created in terms of the amount of clients that you've got on board, the amount of success you've got on, and the fact that you've got to a stage within around 9 months or so to take on a director level hire, which may be pretty scary on its own as well, and we might get onto that. What do you feel has been the kind of differentiation to get that success for you guys? Like, what have you been doing differently that maybe standard recruitment agencies out there don't do, Paul?
I think for me, it's very, very clear where the issues are within recruitment, if you will. So if you're looking at both the industry side of things and the educational side, I think there are massive gaps within that process. And it's like anything. It's like you've got something that's tried and tested, that recruitment hasn't really changed that much. It requires someone to have a CV, and that CV gets sent to a person based on a job description, and you try and look at the two. Does it match? And really, it's like, well, who is that person behind that CV? Is that someone that's just actually good at creating a CV, but they're not that good into, the CV makes them sound better than they are? You compare that to someone who's got a CV that's not very good, but they might be absolutely fantastic. And you're trying to match, which one is the one that's written better? Is that what who we're going to offer the interview? We're not going to offer the other one because the CV isn't that good. So there's that element of it that actually we're talking about people here. Forget CVs. For me, CVs it's a bit of an indication. What it really needs is someone to say, look, I've got someone here who's bloody good, and you want to speak to them. And you take that, then you look at the employer side of things. Employers are busy. They are busy people. Recruitment, especially for SMEs, will normally fall on someone's shoulders who doesn't have time to manage that and doesn't want to manage that. And they try and sell their company through a job description. Well, what if that job description's poor? What if it doesn't really, sing to someone, or someone can't interpret that, or someone reads that and think, well, there's barriers in that, I can't apply for that job. So it was for me about adopting an approach where if you can understand that opportunity as an engineer, if I can understand that opportunity, and then I can go out and find the people that could do that job and would be interested by that job, that's a different approach. So you will get people in recruitment that say, well, that's what we do. And it's like, well, yeah, I'm sure there are people that are doing that. But I think my kind of USP is that I am an engineer. I do understand this sector and I understand these jobs. And so that gives me kudos with employers, but also other engineers will listen to me because I'm one of them.
And I love that. And I think I suppose it makes it a lot easier to resonate with these guys when you've been an engineer, but you've also then worked in that college environment as well, which is great, which is part of your special sauce. But again, mate, let's be honest, that still doesn't just make it easy, does it? So let's talk about like the challenges. Like what's been a challenge? Yes, you've got a great story. Yes, you've got a great background. Yes, you've got great experience, and you understand how to help these guys out, and ultimately have built a solution that adds value on both ends, which is brilliant. But that's always still not enough sometimes, isn't it? Like, what other challenges and roadblocks have come along the way on the business side of things so far?
I think for me, one of the big challenges is you look at the way that the perception of recruitment and how recruitment agencies operate. Now, I am, technically, I'm a recruiter, I'm a recruitment agency. So I'm now in the pool of all the others. Now, I was speaking to someone yesterday, an employer, and they were saying that, I think we were chatting about 11 o'clock, saying already they've been peppered with like 10 emails from these recruitment agencies that are just throwing random CVs at them, hoping that one of them sticks. It's like yesterday, I got an email myself to my personal email address asking me if I want to be a scaffolding lecturer in like Stevenage, and it's like I almost thought, you know what, I'm going to ring this company because I'm going to say, what kind of strategy is this that you have got people in your organisation that think that it's appropriate to send out emails to people like me, that isn't in my area and isn't anything I know about. But I didn't. But it's, one of the challenges I'm facing is these are the people that I'm being compared to, and it's how do you, as a new business and as someone who isn't known, who doesn't have a reputation, how do you elevate yourself above that and resonate with these people when recruitment is such a dirty word and it's got such a bad kind of reputation with a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that's from years gone by as well. Like, obviously, we work with a lot of recruiters. There's a lot more progressive recruiters out there with the right mindset, doing things properly as well. But we're talking like years, decades, aren't we? Decades of a damaged industry, essentially. And that's hard to fight against, isn't it? But yeah, you said a couple of things there. It's like, you've gone from, look, you're not a recruiter. Like, you've never had formal recruitment training. You've never had business training, sales training, marketing training, to now being the founder of a recruitment business. It made me laugh a little bit because it was like similar to the old, oh yeah, I'm going to do an ultra marathon. I've never even run a marathon, but let's go for it. Which is what I absolutely love about you, Paul. And in a case of like, obviously we've worked together, and I think the big thing that I enjoy about working with you, Paul, it's a case of, okay, I'll give that a go. Okay, I'll give that a go. And just getting stuck into things essentially, and that mentality of business is one big experiment, but it helps when I suppose you've got some people around you that have run a few experiments before. Might shortcut some of the amount of experiments that we need to make in the end, to be fair. But we'll maybe get onto that in a little bit more as well. But let's talk about like one of the big milestones recently. So taking on Bry, great lad. But most people when they take on the first hire, not Paul Barker, but most people when they take on the first hire, they'll go, we'll go for someone junior, it'll be cheap and just someone to support me with some tasks and stuff. But no, we go for a director level hire that comes with a director level base salary and the responsibility of doing all the rest of it as well. So talk to me about that and how you're finding that at the moment, because it's quite early days, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that hiring someone, we've been talking about this for a while, but it never felt like the right time. And then it came to a point where actually now this is the right time. And you've kind of got two options. It's either you continue as things are and you play it safe, and playing it safe just doesn't appeal to me. And it's also not natural. And I'm not saying that as in like, oh, I'm, some big risk taker when I do this, but you get to a point where it's like, right, there's two pathways we can go on now. We can either keep the momentum and go for it, or we can actually just like, let's see how we get on. Maybe in 12 months' time, we'll take somebody on. So for me, it became like, right, this is it now. And naturally, I would go to, right, let's get someone in. And then it's, who are you going to get in? Are you going to get somebody in that requires me to support and train them? Well, I'm not a recruiter. I'm kind of like, in some ways, kind of made this up as I've gone along. I've just used my natural intuition and my kind of like experiences to get this business off the ground. What I actually need now is someone who's got the expertise in that area. That was scary because, like you say, that comes with a big commitment in terms of salary and things like that, which would scare some people off. And it scared me a little bit. But what you're going to do, you either do it or you don't. So we found the right person who came available, who I got a good feeling off him, and we offered him a job. And that has been, he's been, I think, 3 weeks. I think this is week 4 with us now. What a difference he has made. I mean, in terms of just the capacity, in terms of the more vacancies we can take on, in terms of someone who's able to manage that process as well. We've gone from maybe 4 or 5 interviews a month to we've got like 8 this week. So it's that has made a huge difference. And it's about, I suppose, having the kind of like having the drive to do that and to take that plunge.
When you're a solo founder spinning all the plates, doing everything yourself, that's a challenge in and of itself, even if you've run a business before. But what was that point where you thought, right, let's do this? I need to make this hire. I need to take the business to the next level. What was that moment for you, Paul?
Yeah, it was definitely. So it's been the education stuff. So when we launched that properly this year, January this year, and that has been very, very popular. We're getting a lot of interest for that. And so then it became, well, this is actually probably quite low risk in one sense to employ somebody, because I know that the work is there. But not only is the work there, I know I can generate more work, and I know I can fill these vacancies. I know I can do that, and I've proved I can do it. So we've proved the concept. Now it's kind of, now we can open doors a little bit and let more people in, take on more work. So that was the point, really. I think it was the industry stuff has been very difficult because, as I said earlier, you're competing with a lot of people that say the same thing. The amount of employers I speak to who will say, I'll tell them my approach and they will say, oh, well, we are working with a couple of agencies and they do something similar. And I'm like, you don't. you don't get it. Whereas with the education side, it's like a further niche. So I'm not just an engineer that's trying to recruit engineers. I'm an engineer that's worked in further education, which is rare. And now I'm going to support you to find other engineers that can work in further education. And that's a big issue. So, that's kind of, it came to that natural point where it felt right. The time was right to take someone on.
Interesting. It's interesting how, like, we've talked about you doing things differently in terms of the actual recruitment side of things, but I think in terms of, look, you've done extremely well in terms of getting to capacity with clients to the point where we've got too many here, so we need to hire a director level person. It's all right, obviously, knowing that you can do a job, and most people who go self-employed know that they can do a job, but it's getting the message across to people to create that demand, isn't it? And make sure that they're listening to it and we're getting their attention in the first place, because otherwise we're just knocking on doors where there's no one behind it. But that's why you've done something differently as well in my book. Like, most recruitment agencies rely on the telephone, cold calling. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. And specking CVs and all those type of tactics. But you've done things differently, haven't you? Like, there's been a very, like, campaign mindset, hasn't there? Like you said earlier, like running pilots, like creating offers specifically for specific challenges. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, like, yeah, this is landing. This is where it's scale time, essentially. And as always, it's an experiment to get there, isn't it? So talk to me about that side of things, because that's fun and games. So you've come out of working in a college to running a business, not understanding marketing and sales, to all of a sudden having to learn all this type of stuff as well. So how have you been finding that, mate?
Yeah, I mean, wow, that has been a massive journey in terms of finding what works best for you. I think it is an experiment, and you do try different things, and you've got to try different things to see what works. So, you talk about the cold calling. That's something that doesn't sit well with me. I could ring people up, but it's almost then I'm pretending to be somebody else. I'm pretending to be Paul the salesman that's trying to sell his offer, and that's not me. I'm not that person. That didn't work well. I had some results with it, and I could probably continue doing it, but it just didn't feel natural to me. I think that what I try and sell is my experience and it's almost like I've got a problem. I've got a solution to a problem which no one's really been able to come up with, and it's like, for the education stuff, it's like, well, how do you communicate that? So for me, it's just not salesy at all. It is just completely selling my experience and my thoughts and how I could potentially, have a conversation with me to let me tell you a little bit more. And I think that, coupled with the LinkedIn work that I'm trying to do, and LinkedIn's a funny one, because you can look at it and think, well, I'm not getting hundreds of likes or hundreds of comments. Sometimes I'm only getting a handful of likes and no comments, but that's a good platform for people to kind of see what I'm about and the kind of things that I think and I'm trying to put solutions towards. So I think it's been taking that approach, really. So that then was set up as it was an email campaign. Now, what's funny with email is, for the industry stuff, I probably had a bank of about 5,000 email contacts, and I set up a campaign that was a little bit more, that was a little bit salesy. I got probably 4 or 5 people coming back out of a 6-7 week campaign. It didn't work. It completely failed. Whereas the education stuff, I pitched it slightly differently, and how I wrote those emails out, and it was, when I first pressed play, I couldn't believe it, because it was like ping, ping, ping notifications. It's like, someone's replied, and then it becomes about speaking to them, not in a sales way, just like, I understand your problems that you're having because I've been there myself. This is what we could do differently, and actually, because I had that pilot that worked, let me tell you about this pilot. Let me tell you what happened. And that resonates with people, and that's enabled me to quickly build trust, I would say.
You could look from the outside and think, well, Paul, you've you've got some significant disadvantages here that you've never run a business, you've never had any experience selling, you've never done any marketing, but we bang on about it quite a lot about like really understanding your customers' problems and challenges is like the key to everything really when it comes to unlocking growth through marketing. And obviously you have a deep understanding of your customers' world, and I think that combined with this like mindset of I'm gonna give stuff a go has just become your like superpower. And you've just been able to like just go out there and try stuff. How has that been for you? Because I mean, this almost like experimenting does come with things like you mentioned the marketing campaign there that didn't work. Like, how's that been for you in terms of like trying stuff and experiencing some successes, some failures? What's been like your How's that been in terms of like the mindset for you?
Yeah, tough is what I would say. I think especially in the early days where you're trying. So I'm not trying as many things now because I find that I kind of know what's working for me and I'm concentrating on those. But initially I was doing all kinds of stuff. Well, you know, I put on, so we did a couple of events, like online events, early days, and I set one up and it was about, the second one I did was like how to, strategies to better recruit and retain engineers, something like that. And I'd set this event up. I marketed it for like 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, I think it was. I'd got a decent list of people coming. On the day, I realised I'd not actually put an event link onto the event itself, so no one could join it. So I'm on this online thing like this with nobody joining, thinking, well, why's no one here? And I'd not even put the link on. So that for me was like, I was absolutely devoured about that. I thought, God, I'm like a complete muppet here. And I remember speaking to Rich about it and just like, you're not going to believe what I've just done. I'm thinking, what are people going to think? And he's like, people won't think anything. They'll just think that something's wrong with their link, and they'll, after 2 minutes, they'll leave and they'll never give it another thought. But for me, I was like, can't believe what I've just done. What a turnip kind of thing. So, but that's, I look back at it now, that's funny. I won't make that mistake again. But you've got to try you've got to try different things. You have to. And, remember talk again, Rich said, what about doing your own podcast? And I was like, I can't do a podcast. But I thought, well, do you know what? I can do a podcast. Why can't I do a podcast? Of course I can. Start doing a podcast. And that's worked for different reasons, because that enables me to deepen kind of relationships with people and draw on their thoughts and experiences to kind of sell my message and my kind of like vision as well and align them to me. So you've just got to have a go here. Like there's no such thing as you can't do things. And I firmly believe that anybody can do anything. And I think that looking at this, the skills gap that we have got in this country, especially within the areas I'm concentrating on, manufacturing and education. Why is there a skills gap? What do you need in order to plug that? You need people. Well, here's the good news: there's millions of them, and they're everywhere, and every year there's more of them. So it's not a skills gap. It's how you are allowing yourself to find these people that can do things. Because it's like someone turning around to me and saying, well, Paul, we've just seen your application for business. I'm sorry, at this time it's going to be a no because you don't have any experience of running a recruitment company. And it's like, but, of course I can, Or someone would have said, well, instead of doing your ultra marathon, why don't you just do a 10K first and see how you get on? And that's the problem for me with a lot of this thing. It's like people presume other people can't do things, and it's like, but you don't. How do you know that? When someone tells me I can't do something or thinks I can't do it, it's like pisses me off so badly. So I wanted to before I
Tip in there, mate. You can't do 10 million quid.
Say that again.
You can't do 10 million quid.
I can't do 10 million quid. I'll show you.
2 years.
So yeah, it's I don't know. I think that people can do things, and I remember before I worked in education, I was looking to like go into like learning and development. No, sorry, when I left education for a couple of years, and I was looking to go into like a learning and development role, and I was applying for these jobs, and yeah, because I didn't have an L&D qualification, no one had, and I just thought that's insane. I can do this job. I'm someone that is an engineer. I've worked in education. I could sit in an engineering manufacturing company and do your learning and development. So I'd be brilliant at it. Couldn't get a job. Couldn't even get an interview. And it's like there's a disconnect here. There's something not right. We're judging people based on what our perceptions of what someone else is capable of, and that's not right. And I think that when you forget that and you give people a chance to prove they can do something, that's when you get successes.
Yeah, you can't be limited by other people's limitations, can you? Essentially. But yeah, I've got a question for you, mate. And we're going completely off scripts here, which is great. So if we've got an aspiring entrepreneur listening, or maybe even a founder that's struggling right now and maybe isn't in the groove, and this might be advice to your future self here, mate, because it might not be all plain sailing forever. What's your biggest tip to a founder or a future entrepreneur, like in terms of what is the number one trait that they're going to need to keep going and keep pushing forward?
Yeah, I mean, I almost don't like offering this advice because I mean, I'm really a nobody. I'm at the start of this journey myself, and it's kind of, you don't want to come across with as like I know all the answers because I definitely don't. But what I would say is, you need to immerse yourself with as much information as you can first. So I remember like in the very early Unbound days, people like Dan, and Marky and Marcus. I remember sitting there on calls like this, just listening to what they were saying, because these are people that have actually started a business and they've got it off the ground and they're making money. So I'm not going to say anything but I'm just going to listen. So be around people that you can listen to and you can kind of hear what they are doing, because even if they're doing something that's totally different to what you're doing, just listening and having that network is, you need to be a part of that. I would say, because some people start a business and it fails, and it's like, well, why has it failed? What help have you had to overcome these hurdles, and to know that you can have a conversation with someone that's going to support you if you're having a bad day or a bad week. So yeah, it's and the Unbound thing has really helped me for that, to be able to listen to people that have been there and done that.
I think there's so much value in that peer group, isn't there? Like, even like, I think at every level, whether you're starting out, whether you're at the next level, whether you're at the next level, like, I personally pay a fortune for that stuff. So I certainly practice what I preach on that front. But I think it's important as part of the journey as well, isn't it? Just to maybe shorten some of those experiments along the way, as well. But yeah, I agree. Like, get obsessed with it. That information side of things, I think it does have to borderline on obsession, doesn't it? Like, if we're going to build something, it does have to borderline on obsession. The other thing, maybe we'll go to you on Tristan as well on this, and we're going off tangent as well. Like, I think obsession and bounce back ability. What would you throw into the mix there, mate?
Yeah, I think what you've said there about immersing yourself in the knowledge, but I think the key thing that you've done really well, Paul, is that you've implemented quickly that knowledge. Like, knowledge and ideas sat on the desk is worth £0, and what you've done is you've gone out there and you've tried stuff with the market. Like, and if it's not worked, you've had that determination to keep going. And I guess for you, I would assume part of that comes from you keep building up this stack of evidence that you push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You keep showing yourself evidence that actually I can do this. And that just creates, I think, big momentum over time, that actually I just keep proving to myself that I can do these things that I've got no experience or no previous background in. So hats off to you, mate. I mean, you've clearly got a big drive and determination to make a positive difference in your industry. Where does this go? What's the vision for Enter Engineering in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's about supporting employers, and whether that's in education or whether that's in industry. I think it's supporting them to implement strategies that overcome the skills gap that we've got, because everybody, it just bangs on about this skills gap, about how much of an issue it is, and you know, the in terms of the economy, in terms of establishments' ability to kind of innovate and grow, whether that's education or industry. If I can help more employers to adopt fresh approaches, because these approaches work, they really do work, but it requires thought, and it requires commitment, and it requires time. There's only so many engineers out there, but you know, and a lot of people want someone to come in and hit the ground running. Of course they do, you know, but if that's not going to happen for your organization, and it's not happening, and you just constantly are putting these adverts out and no one's applying, or you're not getting people, then the problem is you know, you need to do something differently to get people on board. So I think that what's next for the business, who knows? I don't know, you know. I'll just continue doing what I'm doing, and and the moment it's get the business off the ground, and get more people involved, you know, be able to increase capacity, but then start looking at, you know, making a real difference, and adding real value to employers that goes a bit further than just filling vacancies.
Love that. Well, I'm looking forward to the next episode with Paul Barker in 12 months' time to see where we're at. I think it'll be exciting to see, and I've got a vision in my head in terms of where that potentially may be in terms of the run rate you're at, and all the reps you've done, and the foundations you've built in this coming up to first year, mate. Like not even that officially yet, is it? So it's exciting to be with you on this journey, mate. So yeah, let's finish off with a little bit on Unbound then. So and I think it's just one simple question. We don't need to go into detail. We're not here for that. But who do you think would benefit from the support that Unbound gives from your experience? So there's a bit of a spectrum. There's a marketing side of things, there's the momentum, the support with sales, and I suppose everything that helps a small business owner on that bracket. But what type of people? So I do think there's a type of people that join as well. Like, what type of people do you feel would benefit the most, Paul, from your experience?
Yeah, I think it's any business owner, whether you are, you know, whether you've not even launched a business yet, whether you're about to launch, but if you know, if you want to stay still, forget it, is what I would say. You know, if you just want to control your business, and you just want to, and so, you know, some people have these nice lifestyle businesses where they're working from home. You know, they can kind of dip in and out of it, and that's great, and that's really appealing to some people. But Unbound isn't for those people, I would say. I think that if you've got aspirations to keep moving, to keep trying things, to grow as an individual, but also have the knowledge to develop and grow a team, to be held accountable, to try different things, you know, to have a network around you. But you've got to be, I would say, it's for people that are, yeah, definitely switched on, ambitious, and looking to keep growing and keep momentum.
Yeah, I love that, mate. I love that. And I think this lifestyle business gets bandied about, doesn't it? And I think, yeah, if you want a lifestyle business that also earns good money, there's like reps to do first. And I think that's what people miss. It's like, yeah, you can have a lifestyle business that also earns money, but there's graft to do first. And there's a lot of people, your Instagram influencers and all the fucking rest of it, that are just selling this like get rich quick scheme. So I absolutely love what you've said there, mate. So no, thank you for that as well.
Yeah, and you know, and I even think now about in terms of taking Brian on now. So it's Easter holidays at the moment. This would cause me normally to have a meltdown. It's like, how can I balance the kids being off and working? Whereas actually now I've got someone in place, and because of the nature of the roles that we have, I've enjoyed this Easter holiday because I've been able to have a couple of hours here and there with the kids, because we've got a system in place now where we're both doing different things. And that wouldn't have happened without the advice and support and what I've seen through Unbound as well. I think I'd add.
It's yeah, getting smarter as you go along, isn't it? But there's no avoiding those early reps to do so as well. So
You're around people who are like me. Do you know what I mean? And it's like they think like me and they act like me. And actually, these are really, some of these people are very successful. These aren't people who are like, they've got a pizza stall on market, and these are people who are earning. And I was surprised at that, I think, as well, when you actually see some of the people that you're with. So when we've had the kind of Unbound face-to-face events, and you're thinking, crikey, some of these people are like, I only know them from like a WhatsApp group where we're talking about our aims for the day. But actually, you look at the LinkedIn, they've got like 15 staff working for them, like majorly kind of like successful people. So yeah, being around those kind of people, I think, has been very refreshing, but also refreshing when you have the face-to-face events that actually you wouldn't know who the successful people are and who the ones that are just at the start of the journey, because everybody is on the same level. Everybody's got the same issues. Everybody's got the same anxieties. Everybody's got the same challenges. And it's just there might be a different level in terms of where I am and what I'm aspiring to be where they are. But what you see is actually they've got the same concerns as and same worries that I've got now, and it kind of reassures you a little bit that you can get there, and there's no reason why I couldn't be the same as them, but makes you realise that it never becomes easy. Definitely, there's I don't envisage at any point I'm just going to be swanning around on a yacht somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Taking phone calls every now and then. It's not going to be like that. But yeah, I think that the Unbound stuff, with the accountability groups as well in the morning. So this morning, I've been back running. My alarm went off this morning. I didn't want to get up. What's the first thing that comes into my mind? Well, I don't want to not put in the accountability group that I've been running this morning. Do you know what I mean? When I'm seeing that everyone else is like putting the reps in. So, yeah, lots of bonuses and benefits to being part of that community. Definitely.
Love it. It's interesting, isn't it, that you can have
it's another level, another devil, isn't it? So you might be looking at those, Paul, with like 15 staff and thinking, on paper, before joining Unbound, oh, they've got it fucking sus, those guys. Like, they're like, must be easy now. But then it's just another level, another devil. And same as the guy that you mentioned on the yacht. It's just, it's one of those, but yeah, I fully agree. It's much easier being around the right people and the right support in place. So, fucking love having you, love working with you, mate. Like, genuinely, I know I say this and I don't hide it. Like, I genuinely buzz off working with you, and I'm just excited to see where this journey goes. I don't think there's a better example of a aspiring early entrepreneur, and I'm lucky that I get to work with you, mate. So appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up after this, mate.
Yeah, no bother. Cheers, lads.